Okay, you guys, so if you hear all this extra noise in the background, there's someone outside cutting their tree. But I wanted to make this video because I wanted to give a little story time about the day that a patient interaction just totally changed my perspective as a dietitian that works in the diabetes space. So I'm going to be leaving out some information that you don't need to know, because hey, that's that patient's business, and I'm not trying to get in any type of like trouble. But years ago, when I was in my early 20s, when I first started working at a hospital, I got a consultation, I got a referral from the cardiologist to see a patient that had been recently diagnosed with DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. And for all intents and purposes, diabetic ketoacidosis is, you know, when your blood sugars are consistently high for an extended period of time, and it's putting you at metabolic and respiratory it's putting you at metabolic or respiratory distress. So the patient was admitted to the hospital and I got the consultation from the cardiologist, and I found that first to be strange. Because I said to myself, the cardiologist typically does not give me consultations. So what is going on here? Most of my consultations come from the hospitalist. So I'm like, okay. And the patient was in the intensive care unit at that. So I said, okay. Started looking through the patient chart, you know, just prepping prior to going to the unit. So, you know, I got all my handouts because I'm like, okay, depends on the literacy level, if I'm gonna go this way, if I'm gonna go that way. It depends if they are a visual learner, if I'm gonna go this way or if I'm gonna go that way. So I got all my handouts together and I looked in the chart and I was reading the history and physical, and I realized that this particular patient was an Indigenous American. I was so excited because, hey, the state where I live, there are a lot in my area of Indigenous Americans, and I just, let's be friends. That was my whole entire premise. Let's be friends. And then later on in the chart, I'm like, oh, this person is a chief. So I'm like, oh, I'm in the presence of royalty. Oh. So I'm just super excited. And I think part of the reason why I was excited is because I remember prior, when I was taking my RD examination, you know, the one to become credentialed and certified and be able to practice as a dietitian, I spent a lot of time just reading up on and learning about Indigenous Americans. So I was just so happy to be in the presence of one. So when I actually left my office and I went down to the unit, you know, I'm scoping out the room because I'm like, okay, is he going to be by himself? You know, is he going to have family? So I'm scoping out the room and I'm like, okay, you know, there's a lot of people in the room, a lot of people in the room. And speaking with his nurse, and I'm like, who are those people in the room? And they're like, oh, you know, they're his family members. And then I was like, well, who's the Caucasian lady standing in the corner? Is that his family as well? And the nurse was like, no, that's actually his nurse. And I'm like, his nurse? She was like, yeah. She came with him from the reservation. He asked her, can you come with me to the hospital? Because of course, you know the medical lingo, you know the terminology. I don't, my family does it. I need an advocate. Boom, totally understand. Smart move, sir. Kudos to you. So she was in the room, and every provider that came into the room, you know, I noticed that she would kind of like take over the conversation and, you know, be his patient advocate, right? Talk to the provider that came in the room. And then in my head, my young, poor little head, I was like, no. I learned from school that you need to interview the patient. So in my head, I said, I don't want to hear nothing from her. I want to talk to the patient because we're going to be friends, okay? We're going to be friends, and I'm going to be your provider. And I'm gonna talk to you about diabetes, and I'm gonna talk to you about some of your foods, which I'm familiar with, and the foods that I'm not familiar with. You're gonna educate me on that to enhance my understanding and my knowledge. So anyway, I went into the room. I said hi to the patient, hi to his family members, hi to the nurse, because I have manners. And I started directing all my questions to the patient. So we were hitting it off well. I was in that room a while, okay? So typically, if you guys know me, I used to say I'm introverted, but I would say I'm an introvert extrovert. So if I'm comfortable around you, I'm gonna let my guard down and I'm gonna chat it up, okay? So I was chatty Cathy in that room. So, you know, we're hitting it off well. So, you know, I'm going through my forms, filling out all of the questions, and then like while I'm filling out the questions, I'm giving him some tips before we actually dive into our education that I have for him, because I'm also assessing, you know, what angle I'm gonna go with. And I asked him a question that was on the form that I fill out, and the question was about herb and medication interaction. So I'm like, oh, my battery's dying. Let me see if I can hurry up. So I'm like, sir, are you taking any type of herbs? And he stopped. Room went silent. He looked at me like this. Then he looked away, and then he continued his conversation that we were talking about before. And then I'm like, maybe I didn't speak loud enough, because I know sometimes my volume can be very low. So let the conversation go on for a little bit. Then I asked again, not getting the message, and he stopped talking to me altogether. And the nurse in the corner was like trying to get my attention, and I'm ignoring her because I'm like, no, I'm talking to the patient and his family. I'm talking to them about their lived experience. I need to know what they know. And then she kindly said, hey Kim, can we step outside the room and I talk to you? And I was like, oh, here we go. She done interrupted my whole entire interview. Sure, at this point, because I'm not about to try to show up in front of the patient, and plus I have manners. So outside of the room, she was telling me that I was showing him great disrespect, and I'm like, disrespect? What you talking about? And she was like, you're asking him about something sacred. And I said, really? What was that? And she was like, you're asking him what type of herbs he's taking? That is sacred between him and his shaman alone. Not even his wife or his children know what type of herbs he is taking. So for you to continue to ask him that question is a great sign of disrespect. And I'm just like, because this whole entire time, guys, I thought my cultural competency, boom, high. But I realized it wasn't high. It was really low. I had cultural humility, but I didn't have competency. And I started listening to her because I realized, hey, she lives among them. She has been living among them. She has picked up on certain things. And she says, as healthcare providers, we will never know what herbs that he is taking or any type of indigenous person is taking, because it is sacred. And this just totally changed my perspective as a dietitian and as someone in the diabetes space, to realize my cultural competency is ever evolving. There is no finish line. There is no finish line for it. I can have cultural humility, but my competency I will forever be a learner. And I say that all to say, especially in the diabetes space, when I do talk to people that have had different lived experiences that come from different cultures, now I look, I listen, I pick up on the cues, and I'm still ever learning. But this is definitely a patient experience that has changed everything for me. So I just felt like I wanted to share that with you guys. And because my camera is dying, I'm going to skedaddle because I actually have to touch road and make some errands right quick. But remember to do the right thing. Comment, like, subscribe, and share. And let me know if you enjoyed this story time. All right, have a great day. Bye.